Okay. So I'm not going to say very much about what Tim does, because having looked at his website, I'm not sure I totally understand. So I'm hoping we're going to get a much better understanding from him. But it sounds really interesting. And it sounds as if you have an awful lot of different things going on. But Tim O'Callaghan is from Electric Places in Corby, and he has kindly agreed to speak to us tonight. So over to you, Tim.
Great, thanks, Jane, and hello, everyone. I'm glad you didn't give me a long introduction because I've got a few slides that are going to introduce me. I'm going to talk about myself for the
Okay,
next few minutes anyway.
cool.
Great to meet you all. And just to say, I'm Tim O'Callaghan from Electric Places, and we're based in North Northamptonshire, so just over the border from you all. Let me just share my screen. I've got a few slides, and we'll get into it. Can you see my screen? Hopefully, perfect. Thank you. So I'm a consultant at Electric Places. Electric Places is a trading name, an operating name of Electric Corby, which is a community interest company. Originally set up in Corby with the backing of Corby Borough Council, but since the Unitary Authority merging and us broadening our horizons as our work develops, we're transitioning to the name Electric Places. So what are we all about? Well, we're all about sustainability, decarbonisation, helping organisations, places and people to decarbonise. But I'm going to show you a quick picture of what I was up to last weekend, which was in Oxfordshire, doing a survival course, living off the land, being as sustainable as you can be. And this is my creation. I made this bivouac, this thermal A-frame. It took me hours and hours to make it with my own bare hands. And then I slept in it that night, and there was thunderstorm, torrential rain, and it kept me dry and warm. So this is an example of a really sustainable structure, but not one that we would be promoting as part of Electric Places, because we feel that interventions need to be market appropriate, place appropriate, something that will be adopted and accepted by the people and the places and the communities that live there. So I've got to say, it was a brilliant time, but there was a lot of spiders and slugs in there as well, but it did keep me. Okay, so we have a really broad remit. As I say, we're really supporting people, places, and organisations, and we've got some key areas that we look at, which is buildings, transport, and energy systems. But that takes us into all sorts of climate assessments, mitigation adaptation assessments, looking broadly at biodiversity and just transitions. So we work across a whole piece of things, and I'm not sure what you can see here on my slide. Maybe if I minimize this, hopefully you can see my full slide, but I can just see your pictures there. So hopefully you can see my full slide now, so I've minimized that. We were established in 2012 as Electric Corby. So we've got well over a decade of really digging in and delivering this advice and support, and also writing grants and securing grants to provide funding to people, to residents, to places to test novel technologies. And we've brought in well over now £22 million for places and businesses and residents, not only in Corby, not only in North Northamptonshire, but far beyond that now. We're doing projects up near Leeds and in the north of the country. We are fully self-funded, and that is mostly through innovative R&D work and also contract work. But we're not only, the key thing here really is that we're not just a strategic company. We don't just sit around and think and write consultancy reports. We're also all about action. So we feel it's really, really important to be taking action, and I'll take you through a number of demonstrator projects in the latter half of the presentation, showing the type of areas that we're taking action in and the impacts they're having. But it's just really important. Otherwise, we'll end up like this, poor old polar bear here, clutching to business as usual and not adapting to the changes that are upon us. So firstly, I'll talk about a few strategic study areas that we work on. We do this at a local authority level, at an industrial level, and also at infrastructure levels. The biggest piece of work on this that we've done recently was called North Northamptonshire to Net Zero. So that's been abbreviated to NN2NZ, so you might hear me saying that throughout the presentation. So for this North Northamptonshire to Net Zero project, we looked at the art of the possible for the whole of North Northamptonshire, so the whole local authority area, and looked at thousands of initiatives. We opened our cast our net wide, asked the communities what sort of initiatives are you doing in the local area. We talked to government bodies and innovation bodies such as Innovate UK. We got a database of well over 8,000 initiatives. What about this novel battery technology? What about this novel PV technology? And really assessed all of those with our partners, including Cranfield University, WSP, who are a large consultancy, Slingshot Simulations, to come up with a cost and risk adjusted roadmap for net zero. So what are the key things that we could be doing in North Northamptonshire to reach net zero by 2050 or before? And this whole process took us through the development of a digital twin of the local authority area, where we could input lots of data points such as energy system, infrastructure, social metrics of deprivation, EV uptake metrics, carbon emissions, NOx emissions, things like that, and then run simulations. And what if we could increase PV across the local authority area? What would be the impact of CO2? How many roofs or how many car parks would need to be plastered in PV, for example, to make a meaningful impact? And as I say, this led us to develop a digital twin, and I'll just show a brief overview of a snapshot of this digital twin. And I'll just fast forward, where we could create this digital model of the local authority area. And here we're looking at an area in Corby, where we're looking at the prevalence of PV panels, and understanding, well, where there's a high prevalence of PV panels, is there generally a better EPC, energy performance certificate, for the homes and businesses there. We can pull out those sorts of relationships. We can pull out relationships with metrics of social deprivation. We can input the electric vehicle charging infrastructure and run simulations on the impact of transitioning different proportions of vehicles to electric vehicles. And here we can see the impact of changing those transport approaches on the CO2 emissions and the impacts on the transport network as well. So we could run those scenarios. We could input the air emissions into the digital twin as well, and also look at the impacts of future housing developments as well in the area. So that was a really exciting piece of work, and has led us to generate, what are some big ideas? What are the big things that we could do to start closing the carbon gap in North Northamptonshire? And some big takeaways there was, well, we should really be covering car parks with PV. Cars should really be transitioning to electric vehicles, and we should be doing things to help people transition to ultra low emission vehicles as quickly as possible, and certainly by 2040 as much as possible. Transitioning trucks to different forms of fuels, and more less emission based fuels such as e-fuels. Exploring different fossil fuel free fertilizers, and also a big part of this is retrofitting and insulating homes. So this has formed the bedrock of a lot of the further studies that we've done in the local authority area, and it's also helped us win a grant under Innovate UK for a project that we call Decode Corby. And this is to develop a decarbonisation plan, and also a delivery body, an organisation to help us deliver on the plan, to decarbonise the industrial and manufacturing cluster around Corby. So I'm sure many of you know Corby. It was very much dominated by the steelworks, still a large footprint and presence in the town now, Tata Steel, and the surrounding area is a cluster of small businesses. And then around that, we've got a whole range of other really interesting locations. So carbon emitters, high energy users such as data centers, Anglian water sites, which is to the south of Corby. And we also have surrounding renewable generators as well, such as Chilveston. So we've really pulled all of these partners in, and we're during the process at the moment, but we're looking at key points of carbon emissions. We're looking at the total emissions for the area and coming up with a route map about what are the types of infrastructure that are really key to help industries electrify their processes, and what are points of shared infrastructure that public funding could help to drive along rather than just on-site measures. So this is another really interesting piece of work ongoing. We are also and have been involved in a whole range of other infrastructure level strategic thinking, currently working on the North Northamptonshire climate change strategy with North Northamptonshire Council. So focusing on really key areas there. What are the mitigation strategies? What are the adaptation approaches? What are the key action points that the council can take, residents and also businesses, to help deal with climate change that is already upon us. We've looked at energy infrastructure reviews for the 7 garden communities that have been built out across North Northamptonshire. So really understanding what are the limits for developers to gain access to the grid electricity grid capacity that they need, not only to build a house, but also to transfer away from gas infrastructure and to cope with the rise of electric vehicles as well. So these are really key issues that developers are having challenges with and are causing viability issues for their developments. And then finally, we've done a lot of work for the North Northamptonshire electric vehicle strategy itself. This stems from our core, where in 2012 we led a ERDF funded project to install what was then very futuristic EV charging network in Corby. So it was the first one where we installed 12 chargers years ago ahead of the curve, and that's really given us expertise and allowed us to continue to be in this field. And we're doing a demonstrator project at the moment that I'll talk about in a few slides. Jane, I'll also say I can talk about this for a long period of time, so do pipe up, tell me to go quicker or slower, but I'll keep on going. I shouldn't be talking for too long, but I'll keep my cadence up. But just chipping me along if you need to.
No, thank you very. No, I think this is a good pace for me. But if anyone else has got any questions or there's stuff that's not clear, as Tim goes on, then please do shout or put something in the chat or put your hand up, and I'll bring you in. But no, this is all very interesting. In terms of the North Northampton climate change strategy, obviously will be good to see that when it's published. I know West Northamptonshire is currently going through a consultation process on ours, so would be interesting to compare and contrast.
Fantastic, of course. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we're going to be entering the consultation process soon. So yeah, brilliant.
Okay, great, thank you.
What could you repeat again what the garden community energy infrastructure is?
Yeah, so there are 7 garden communities being built across North Northamptonshire. So these are large developments that account for 27,000 new homes, I think, over the area. So they are significant developments, the largest of which is Hanwood Park, which is down near Kettering. So the issue there is that developments and developers need to be future focused and understand what people need and to meet future building regs, so the future home standards, which is really looking to move away from gas central heating and to make provisions for electric vehicle charging both on plots and also for public charging areas. And it's really hard for developers to understand what is the uptake of electric vehicles over the next 10, 20 years. What is the impact of solar PV on homes? Why is it so expensive to get grid point of connection for my development? Why is that putting my development in jeopardy? It's not something that all developers have really costed for. And the move away from gas is going to make that a lot worse as we need to electrify heating, that process. So we were looking at that. We interviewed all of the developers and came up with basically what we felt were like the key issues, the key drivers behind those issues, and recommendations around those issues. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that was an overview of the strategic study.
So sorry, I'm just going to chip in there again. So this is really, really interesting because one of the problems that has been with building new houses is that when you say to or local authorities, so the houses that are being built are not suited for the future, so they don't have solar PV, they are not well enough insulated, etc., etc. The reply that tends to come back is that we can't enforce those standards on developers. So I'm wondering how is this a question of working together with developers that are willing, or is it, I'm just trying to understand how that relationship works, because it seems somewhat different to what we've seen previously.
Yeah, so it's a really complicated and political issue. But
yes,
but what we've pushed for with planning in North Northamptonshire is to try and aim for above policy. And there was a good bit of work done around the joint core strategy, which set out the local area plan essentially, and that had the bedrock for some good policy. So really trying to ensure good use of passive solar, quantifying energy usage and the like. But it is a really grey area about how much local authorities can go above and beyond national policy and building regs. And there is an argument that they can. So we continue to push for that. But the developers can always come back and challenge with viability issues. So it doesn't appear that it's you can write a piece and it solves the problem. It's an ongoing negotiation and works with developers. And Section 106 funding can be used in lots of creative ways to try and mitigate some of that and to really look at the carbon emissions associated with developments and try to mitigate those in creative ways. Because this is a whole other discussion point, but the issues around carbon emissions associated with developments are only, the government is only really focused about emissions in operation, which is just the tip of the iceberg. Analyses that we've done and done in combination with WSP to show that probably the 5% of emissions. The rest of it is all in the actual embodied carbon for the infrastructure and the carbon used to actually make the homes itself. So it's a challenge. I don't know if I've answered your question, Jane, but it's a really challenging problem and one that people are starting to realise and write about.
Yeah.
The government really needs to make the legislative changes. Is the ultimate answer, I think.
Yeah, no, I think that's probably. Yeah, no, it's a really interesting answer. I wasn't expecting you to say, well, we've found a magic wand under our sofa and we've just fixed everything, because it is difficult. But I think it's really interesting to know that in your area, at least, people have entered into that conversation with developers. So I think that seems like the way forward, doesn't it? In the absence of more directive legislation. Thank you.
And just to round that out, I mean, it's always good to talk. It's not always, doesn't always lead to action. But I interviewed all of these developers at length over a good period of time, multiple times, and there genuinely is people want to do the right thing generally, but they're always guided by money, I suppose. So it's a challenge.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll let you move on now.
Okay, so that first section was around how we think about things, what we're thinking about, what strategic documents and developments we're helping the local authority with and helping organisations with. So what? So what are we actually doing about it? So this next section is really about action, and action is really key because it changes things. So we are doing a whole studies, whole demonstrator community recruitments into energy communities, and I've got two flagship projects here. I'll talk about the right-hand side one first, Flex Unity, as we finished this one now. This is a Horizon 2020 EU project that we did with the consortium of European countries, and we were leading the work packages on community recruitment and setup, and we established a community in Corby and also led the establishment of communities in Iberia, so Spain and Portugal as well. And in Corby, we established 30 homes and 4 businesses, recruited those, and installed low carbon technologies and energy monitoring devices in all of those. So, for example, each of the businesses received electric vehicle chargers, they received battery energy storage, and really detailed energy monitoring software. And likewise, in homes, received energy monitoring software and control devices that could actually turn on and off certain devices, such as fridges and freezers and things like that. So that at a community level, we could look at the energy usage, the total amount of solar generation, and we had permission from residents to be able to turn on and off devices in response to grid signals, for example. When there's a lot of solar PV, maybe you want to be turning on certain devices. When there's too little or there's grid constraint, you want to be turning off certain devices for certain periods of time without impacting residents' comfort levels. So we installed all of that and we had it working. As you can appreciate, this was a demonstrator project, and some of the work was modeled and simulated. We didn't want to be turning off people's freezers full of Christmas dinner or anything like that over certain periods. But the project was really, really successful in understanding community energy usage and understanding generation at a community level, and the kind of the market-driven approaches that could be used to nudge people's behaviours, and also maximise the use of that local generation as well. So this was a really great project for us, and it was also awarded the Seal of Excellence from ISGAN, which is an industry body. So that was really cool, and that also helped us leverage this next project, which is ongoing, the project on the left-hand side, which is called Project Clear. This is funded by the Energy Redress Scheme, and if you're not aware of that, that's a pool of funding that energy suppliers have to pay if they're caught doing something wrong. They might be fined by Ofgem, and that money goes into a pool, which is then used to do more philanthropic projects. We received funding through that to create a energy community again, but this time looking at matching of excess solar generation within the community. So we are recruiting at the moment, recruiting residents with PV and a cohort without solar PV on their roofs, and we will be monitoring their generation, their levels of consumption, and then matching excess PV with the consumption within the community. And that's all going to lead through a complex series of analyses and calculations, but it will lead through to residential bill reduction. So those who are exporting their excess PV to the community will receive money off their bills, and those who use the energy, that exported energy within the community, will also receive money off their bills because they're using locally cheaper energy. So this is a really exciting project for us. It's very innovative. There's been a lot of work done with lawyers trying to just to ensure and reassure our chosen energy supplier that this is all within the regs. It's really exciting, very innovative, and we're really proud to be doing this in North Northamptonshire as well. Okay, so I hope I've kind of given a brief overview of our energy community work in terms of maximising local solar generation, and also the start of peer-to-peer energy trading.
And these are all existing homes,
Yep.
existing households that are being recruited. And what sort of numbers are you looking at within that? Do you have a sort of a target number, or?
Yeah, so for Project Clear, again, we're looking at 30 households, but in truth, we had to receive the funding, and then we had to onboard a supplier, an energy supplier, and for it to be worth their while, we probably were going to be recruiting hundreds of homes. So once we've got a supplier on board, and we can work with them with their existing customer base to expand this quite rapidly. So 30 is our minimum target, and hopefully it's going to be hundreds, and we can really demonstrate the impact of this energy matching process. If that makes sense. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. No, that's really helpful. And I guess in that sense, there's something in it for the energy supplier as well, isn't there? Because they're doing some innovation with their existing customers. So
absolutely, I will go on record here right now and say this is an energy redress scheme project, and the energy supplier will not receive any benefit from this funding during the project, either through funding or through PR. But post-project, yes, we're really demonstrating a new model whereby a supplier can show their social benefits. They can save on some of the policy costs and pass those policy costs on to their customers as well. So absolutely. But just to be really clear, no suppliers can benefit from our funding.
Okay, that's interesting. Thank you.
Okay.
When you say PV energy matching, is that more of a summer activity? Because in the winter, if you say, like myself, have an air source heat pump, your PVs don't even touch the amount of energy that you need.
Yeah, so there's certainly going to be more generation during the summer months and more overspill, more excess delivered, but it's really dependent specifically on the time of use. So if, for example, on a cold, bright day, there are homes that are generating, but no one is at home, and perhaps the heating is off, maybe they don't have heat pumps, there could still be significant or suitable overspill, so exports onto the network that could be matched against other consumers who are at home. So maybe a home without PV within the community that work from home. So we still see great benefit all through the season.
Have you also looked at micro wind turbines?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So, and I'm only talking about some flagship projects that we're doing on this presentation. But yes, we've installed a vertical access wind turbine. So that's a micro generation as part of another EU project to demonstrate, novel methods of harvesting urban gusty wind. And that has been a real challenge because we were doing that during the kind of de facto onshore wind ban following a 2015 government ministerial statement under the Conservative government, which basically said all wind generation needs to be offshore. So we entered this project to demonstrate wind, and North Northamptonshire is quite a windy place, it turns out. And we found a site in Corby, which is a pretty good location as well. And it was a council site, so we were keen and working with the council to install wind generation, but the council's own planning department, based on this ministerial statement in the National Planning Policy Framework, effectively banned it. So we had this long to and fro over a year, working through legals and trying to, I guess, set a precedent to install. It seems like the time, and we'd love to see, we think it forms a real part of the critical mix of renewables within communities. Hopefully that answers your question. I can't see who I'm talking to, so I hope that answers your question. If not,
Yeah,
there's
yeah, it was
Yeah.
Mick, but yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
thanks, Nick.
Yeah.
And I think, given that experience, I think we can understand why not many private households have put up wind turbines, because most people wouldn't have the resources to get through that kind of obstacle,
Yeah.
would they?
Yeah, absolutely. So the statement was really really blanket covering, and the advice we got back from planning policy was that regardless of size or number, it would need to be rejected. So there has over the last nearly 10 years or so, there's been no support and effectively a de facto ban on onshore wind. And that is changing now, it appears, under a Labour government. So hopefully we'll be doing more work in that area.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so moving on. So another demonstrator project that we've just secured and we haven't yet started is with Northern Power Grid. So this is the DNO, or the distribution network operator, that operates in kind of the Leeds area and northwards in the UK, well, in England, I should say. And this is a really big flagship project sponsored by Ofgem to develop and trial future framework for community distribution operation. And the idea here is to look at the local substation level for, that connect into all of the homes in the surrounding area. And especially where those substations are constrained. And we've got a lot of constraints in North Northamptonshire. And I can talk at length about that, but I'm not going to. But they also have constraints up in the north as well. And those constraints can not only be on demand, so it might cost you a lot of money if you want to connect electric vehicle charging points, for example, but kind of almost perversely, those constraints can be on renewables, so generation as well. So those constraints are really recognised as limiting the rollout of PV, of other sorts of renewables, and also battery technology within communities. And this is a project to look at the substation level. So what can we do about it? How can we monitor the pull, the draw, and the flows of electricity through that substation? How can we maximize headroom? How can we encourage changing of behaviors? Maybe when the capacity is limited, we can encourage people to turn devices off. What would be the price elasticity of those? How much money would it be money that people would need to be paid? And if so, how much money? Would it be some form of social credits, for example? And really trying to create the financial and carbon reduction benefits for customers and communities. So this is a really exciting project for us. Our partners are down below, some really great players, Nodes, S&P Net, working with CleanWatts and working with a really great community. I think it's the largest community solar PV project in the UK, which is in Barnsley, and the company behind that is Energize Barnsley, and that's a community benefit society. So that are really focusing and working with the most vulnerable in their communities. So we'll be setting that project up between now and Christmas, and then looking to actually put into practice and to test some of our hypotheses about providing greater capacity for these communities to install and roll out with renewables. So that's all I can say at the moment, because we're just kicking this off, and we had a kickoff meeting today in Leeds that my colleague went to, so very exciting for us. We also look at transport. So I've mentioned EV charging. So we were involved and led the rollout of the initial network of 12 electric vehicle chargers in Corby, well ahead of the curve. They've been well used and are now getting pretty old. They're 12 years old. Since then, we've been doing Innovate UK projects, helping electric vehicle charger manufacturers to really understand the community needs, what are the human and behavioural requirements for electric vehicle charging hubs. And on the right-hand panel here, we've got a hub hub manufacturer that we worked with a little bit from an Innovate UK project that was really influential for us. and they have now gone on to install charging hubs at certain locations across the UK. So that's Capeport, and they're like really cool looking wooden infrastructure, and topped by PV. And they allow the kind of any light that isn't absorbed by the PV kind of dapples through into like this kind of tree-like canopy structure below. So a really nice environment for people to charge their electric vehicles. We are also looking at innovative charging solutions. So over the last 2 or 3 years, we've been looking at vehicle to grid charging, electric vehicle charging. So if you think about when you plug your electric vehicle in, you're pulling energy from the grid to put into your vehicle's battery. Well, these chargers, these V2G chargers, not only allow the pull of energy from the grid, but also the flow back from your electric vehicle. So if there are particular signals you can imagine from the grid or from a building to say, hey, I don't want to pull energy at this very costly time from the grid. I'm going to pull it from electric vehicles in my car park that are hooked up to V2G chargers. And these are the sorts of projects that we're looking at now. And the latest project we're working on is called V2VNY, again, an Innovate UK project. Some of the partners are shown down below: Jaguar Land Rover, Proud Charge, Drive Electric with Beyond, and also working with Oxfordshire County Council and looking at special V2X chargers. So they're not only looking at vehicle to grid, but also vehicle to anything. So whether it's to the grid, whether it's to a building, whether it's to another load, all of these are being looked at and can be monitored and managed through this next generation of V2VNY chargers. So that's another exciting project for us. We're looking to install them at sites across Corby and beyond, so Tata, some business centres, and hopefully some vehicle logistics centres as well, where there's going to be a huge need and a huge pool of battery storage there. If you think about the thousands of vehicles that come off the transporters, require charging, and then are moved on to their customers. So there's this great pool of electric vehicle batteries, these mobile batteries, that can be used to help balance the grid. Okay, and then I think we're getting close now to some final slides. I also spoke about buildings. Not only am I building bivouacs in the wilds in Oxfordshire, but we also do some impactful building projects. The first of which was a zero energy builds home project, which the idea there in this bottom right hand panel here, that I don't know if you can see me hovering over it, this was to retrospectively design existing homes, kind of normal looking homes, improve their insulation, improve their low carbon technologies, so air source heat pumps, mechanical ventilation, PV, thermal PV, to improve to reduce their energy usage. Sorry, was there a question? No. If there is,
no, I think there was somebody that not on mute, but I've sorted that out now.
I'll carry on. If there is a question, to shout out. And then that led on to our latest development, which ran through, the COVID pandemic and 2019 and such. So that was an exciting time, but where we designed and ultimately marketed 47 homes, all delivered with modern methods of construction, so with SIP panels. So there's not a brick and mortar on this site at all. If you can see the top panel here, they're all built out of the panel-like structure. So if you can imagine, a truck comes and it's almost like an IKEA flat pack house, and all the builders need to do is to scratch their heads and think, oh my gosh, there isn't any bricks and mortar, I really don't know what I'm doing, but actually build a house like flat pack furniture, as it were. So it's much quicker. It's much more resistant to changes in the weather. They don't have to stop for cold periods or anything like that, wet periods. It's really interesting building material. All of the homes have what underneath actually in their foundations and what's called an earth energy bank. So any excess heat is pumped down into their foundations and can be pulled back through a ground source heat pump to heat the home very efficiently. So they're not on gas, they're on heat pumps, and this earth energy bank is a great way to reduce or to increase efficiencies. The homes have hybrid solar PV and thermal panels. So not only do they harvest light energy for electricity, they're also harvesting light energy to heat hot water that can be stored and used efficiently. The homes have battery storage, mechanical ventilation, and also home energy monitoring systems. So you can control devices, lights, use of battery and the like through your phone. And they are, of course, low carbon in operation. So this was dubbed a Building for 2050 project by the government agency, and all of the homes have been built and they've all been sold. And yeah, it's a really interesting location. They were built in a place called Priors Hall Park, really close to our offices in Corby. So it's a really interesting project.
How does the cost of building a house like that compare with conventional means? It sounds like they probably go up quicker, but
yeah, that's a really good question. So a key to help with the design, making it happen, and actual building, certainly elements like the ground source heat pumps, the earth energy bank, was really European funding. So public funding was really key to help us understand, how do we deliver this? What are the challenges? And how do we ultimately kind of make it profitable, I suppose? So there's been a lot of learnings with this, and this has actually led to an offshoot company from Electric Places called Positive Places, which has incorporated a ton of learnings from these sorts of projects into sustainable, good community-driven locations. So yeah, public funding helps is the short answer, I suppose. But we need these demonstrator projects, and we need a large change in the building industry. It's really, you've got to get builders trained up in all of these sorts of modern methods of construction. Yeah. It's not something that's quick.
Yeah, that sounds fascinating. It sounds like it would be a really interesting place to visit and have a look. But maybe they don't look that different to normal houses, but
ever so slightly. I mean, it's far more normalized now. I mean, this top panel and this left panel are examples of the homes. Yeah, they don't look overly futuristic, but they do have a nod to they're not Tudor or anything like that.
Thank you.
Okay, and then another area we work in, obviously, is we're a community interest company. As I say, we're really trying to do our bit to help residents and local businesses, providing them support with decarbonisation, with energy efficiencies. So most recently, we are running a Boost for Business, B4B program, helping local SMEs, so SMEs in North Northamptonshire, with decarbonisation. And we are running a series of workshops to help with what do we mean by carbon, like a carbon 101. And I know Alexina Cassidy from Acnow Consulting has been really helpful with this program. I know she's part of your organization, so it's a real pleasure to be here tonight to speak about that. How do we help SMEs with carbon reduction planning? How do we help them find funding? So we've got a whole range of workshops planned, ongoing for the balance of the year. We have also helped the council launch a green transition grant, which is aimed at SMEs, ranging from £5,000 to £50,000 worth of project funding to help with capital expenditure and also R&D in low carbon technologies. So it's been really interesting talking to local companies about their R&D efforts in things like wind generation. I think hopefully we'll have some good applications and some good results from that. We do also help residents, and we've done big energy saving network events over a number of years. That's actually out there going to community centres, working with frontline responders, signposting vulnerable individuals in the community to help with energy bills, to help with keeping warm, and that's been, it's been really nice to do those sorts of projects as well. So thank you for listening. I mean, this has been a really brief summary. It was quite fun because I was asked to do this presentation, and then I asked the team, so have we got, have we got any kind of like broad overview slides of what we do? And we've been so project focused for the last 5 years or so that we all just looked at each other and said, no, we've only got like really like technical project focused slide deck. So it was quite fun just to pull this out. I hope it's been a reasonable kind of level of overview. I've tried to stay away from the technicalities, but hopefully I can leave you with Electric Places is an operating name of Electric Corby, which is a community interest company. We have been providing funding, accessing funding at UK, European level to support residents and businesses to help with sustainable practices, and also testing real world low carbon technologies, novel technologies. We're a small team, senior members there shown along the top. Small but punching above our weight, really, and we're really enthusiastic. We want to be creating an exciting, more sustainable and equitable future. And we've been working with so many partners, and that's really key to what we do, both in academia and as green business energy leaders, to try and set the seeds of change, I suppose. We've just talked about some projects and many, many more types of projects that we've been working on. And these are some of the most exciting and influential ones that we've done and are looking to do. So on that, I'm really happy to take any questions and chat for as long as you want.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. That's been really interesting. Just in case I forget to ask afterwards, will you be able to share the slides after this so that we can let people have a look through them at their leisure? It's been, I can tell that it's just scratching the surface, but it's so interesting. I think the first thing that comes to my mind on watching that is a lot of the things that you're doing, the sort of things that people think, well, why don't people just do that? Like the thing around the sort of local electricity distribution. It seems like such an obvious thing, but I'm sure much more complicated than people imagine. But it is the way we need to be doing things in the future, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And you really hit a key point there, is the distribution energy networks. So certainly in North Northamptonshire, we're really hampered by constraints on the local grid. And to cut a long story short, in order to meaningfully install, larger scale communal solar, communal wind, communal batteries, which will ultimately help with grid capacity issues, but we need to wait until there's a new grid supply point built, and the estimates for that being built are by 2033, so 10 years time. So those 10 years are we're going to be behind on, and the community is going to be behind on benefiting from those sorts of renewable technologies, renewable generation and storage. So you're right. It sounds simple, but it's really complicated, and it's not only technically complicated; it's also politically complicated. So we're trying to work and set up organisational bodies to lobby for change quicker. So yes, I agree.
Thank you. Right. Does anybody else have any questions?
I'm just going to stop sharing.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Then we can only be able to see people's faces. That'll be much better. Harry, it looks like you might have a question. What a surprise.
Yes. Really interesting, Tim. Thank you so much. Can I ask about your digital twin? I'm nosy. What software is that you're using?
It's a proprietary software developed by a company up in Leeds called Slingshot Simulations.
Okay.
And it uses, I am no expert in this, it's quite technical, but it uses GraphPad technology to automatically identify links between different data that are input. So that's probably the limit of my understanding, but it's really
that's great. Thank you. Question number 2.
Okay.
Describe the heat store. That seems really interesting. What's it structurally? How does it work? What's it built from?
The Earth Energy Bank.
Yeah.
Yeah. So essentially, it's boreholes drilled in the foundations of homes. So you've got to. It obviously it works best when you're building new homes. So as you're laying the foundations, you can drill boreholes, and you can store excess heat through water movement through those. So excess heat can be driven down into the soil, and it's relatively well insulated there. And we work with a company called Kaplan Homes, who developed that system, and also Cardiff University, I believe, to test the outputs from that. So yeah, it's quite an innovative.
So if you're digging boreholes, had you not considered ground source heat pumps?
Yes, yeah. So essentially, there is a ground source heat pump
Sorry, I beg your pardon. I thought that you were using air source heat pumps and then putting the excess heat into the ground source.
Oh no. So that is ground source heat pump. So it's a
Right.
really
Okay.
it's an efficient way to have that ground source array to stick it under the house, basically. Yeah.
My last question is: are you working with any local architects for these buildings, or is it just a building company you're working with?
So for those homes, I think it was an architect company in Leicester, City of Leicester.
Leicester, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, they weren't in North Northamptonshire, I believe. So some of that project was before my time, but I think it was Stanford Architects in Leicester. Yeah.
I have no more questions, Jane. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That's given the rest of us a chance to think of questions. Anybody else got any questions? Mike.
It's I used to live in a tower block, and we had some Bright Spark build some timber frame buildings next door, which burnt to the ground. What's the flammability of these materials you're using in these heavily insulated houses?
That's a great question. Yes. So a lot of SIP panels, or some of them, they can be timber built. So they're timber structurally insulated panels, but the ones used in these homes weren't. So they're essentially steel frames, and then on either side is effectively what looks like plasterboard, and within is some insulation, so foam-based insulation. So they're not flammable, they're flood resistant, rot resistant, and they're also structurally sound as well. So you can build up to, I think 3 or 4 floors, using the structure, because they're steel framed themselves. So they're not flammable. They're not wooden SIPs.
And have you looked at putting rainwater capture into these properties, or is that outside your remit, really?
That's a good question. I'd need to ask about that, actually. I'm not sure what provisions were made for rainwater capture on those properties. Seems like an obvious, an obvious win. But certainly we were majoring on the technology and communal energy sharing and management. So I'm not sure on the answer to that, Mike, but I can get back to you if that helps.
Thank you. Any questions from anybody else? I know we have asked a lot of questions as we've gone along, so that may have dealt with a lot of Emmy. Where are you?
Yeah, hi, Tim. That was so inspiring, and it's so lovely to have such a sort of positive, when we're dealing with a lot of doom with the climate, if you like. So that's brilliant. How realistic is it going to be for community energy projects to be independent of the grid?
Oh, that's an interesting question. So specifically off grid, I think I think there's opportunity to do that. Whether you'd want to do that in an urban environment, I mean, I think the grid provides a really nice backup.
Yeah.
Especially if you want to integrate businesses and things, maybe have buildings that are for co-use. It might be business and residential. Without the grid, I suppose you'd need some battery, you'd need generation, but you'll be running a risk, and someone will need to manage that, and someone will need to take the legal challenges when somebody doesn't have the power they need when they need it. But all definitely possible. I mean, the technology is there, but you might just need to be happy, and there's arguments for that. We should perhaps try and be more happy with less, power on demand all the time, especially with electric vehicles. That's a great source of backup power. But in terms for integrated healthcare, integrated businesses, it might be a risk too much, certainly for insurance at this time. So that the grid makes a good backup. And it's just it's political and technical around how much we should all pay collectively for that backup, and what sort of services the grid as a backup should provide us. Should it just provide us power at the switch? Should it provide us more flexibility to enable cheaper connections, to enable more renewables to be put on the grid quicker? And these are all questions really being posed at this time as distribution network operators are transitioning to something called distribution system operators. So where flexibility and energy management becomes part of their remit. And also what we're looking at is the remit of the community themselves. So this kind of community DSO aspect. So I don't know, I probably just talked around your question. I don't know if I'd answered it.
No, it does. I think, I suppose in my mind it was, small communities rather than business and the whole thing. It was whether there might be pockets of it. I think there might be in Oxford that they've got huge amounts of batteries. Didn't we have a talk once, Jane, from an Oxford project that was pretty much independent of the grid?
I don't think it was completely separated from the grid, though. There was definitely sort of flow backwards and forwards, I think. No,
it is interesting, as you say, about the distributional and the variety of ways to use the grid, that could be coming. Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for the question.
Any more questions? Rupert?
Yes, this is all very fascinating. One of the big problems, of course, is getting a community to agree. So sometimes I think it's easier to go and do your own thing. But is one going to suffer financial penalties for doing one's own thing? I mean, if you join up with, shall we say, Octopus with their variable tariffs and things, you're effectively using Octopus as a community, aren't you? I mean, they're making money out of it, yes. But they balance things out for us, and we're not going to be able to generate all the electricity we want for ourselves. So it seems to me that that's the best way of going around it.
Yeah, I think okay. So we've got problems, and I think as with all problems, there's an infinite number of ways to solve them, and some of them are to kind of go your own way, some are to work as a community, some is to work with industry leaders. But the key is really trying to identify what are those market acceptable approaches so that we can have all stakeholders on board. And it's really hard to spot those, before you know the answer. Retrospectively, it'd be really easy to say, oh, it's obviously this model. But when we're there and we don't quite know how many electric vehicles there are going to be and quite when they'll be, and quite the impact or the benefits, and we don't know how specifically the grid is going to decarbonise by 2050, and there's lots of constraints. We don't know, what new technologies might be developed. We probably have most of the technologies, all of the technologies we really need to deliver net zero, but we don't quite know how all the supply chains are going to fit together. And I tell you what, if every home in North Northamptonshire wanted to get PV tomorrow, they couldn't. If every home wanted to retrofit and have insulation, they definitely couldn't, and the cost of that would be astronomical. So I think it's going to be a mix of all of it. I think there has to be you have to work as a community. I think there are benefits there. I think there are times when we'll need to work as to have a backup, but whether that backup needs to be the main source of power all the time, or whether it's reduced somewhat, so we have a kind of a reduced grid capacity for really times when we need the power. Maybe, I don't know, maybe that's a really fascinating question, Rika. I would love to chat about it. I can see a really interesting opinion piece.
But as an individual, it's very difficult to get enough knowledge together to know what to do. But I read today that there's a big show coming up in Birmingham. Is it next week or the week after, on solar and batteries? A huge exhibition. I think it's for the trade, but there's nothing to stop one just going along, and it's free.
Yeah.
Is it a good idea going to something like that and just talking to everybody? Gather information.
I suppose, yeah, it's not a bad idea. I suppose you'll be talking to suppliers, so take all the information with a pinch of salt, but you'll probably get a good view of the trajectory of movements and maybe chat about legislative challenges. So why aren't there batteries everywhere? And then the battery manufacturers might say, oh, well, we just can't install big ones anywhere because of the grid constraints. So you can pick up, key bits of information.
There's a surplus of solar at the moment. I was reading the Chinese are having great difficulty selling it, and the prices have crashed down in the last few weeks.
Right. Okay. Oh, I hadn't actually heard that. But the challenge in North Northamptonshire, at least, is that would be brilliant to get all that solar, but we can't install it because the grid can't take it. So there are these really challenging, transient, market-driven changes in cost, in policy, and it's going to be really interesting to see how it all shakes out. But I feel like you, and I've been working in this area a number of years. I don't feel like I feel far from knowing all of it and knowing which way it's going to go. But it's fun to be in it, and there are some really interesting ideas and will be change. So,
like everything else, it's complicated.
It's just
it's less complicated if you do your own thing, though, isn't it?
Yes, I guess.
You haven't got to rely on grants and get in touch with everybody else. You just get on and put in some solar panels and connect them up.
Yeah. If you've got the money to do it, then you can find the right person, you know how to do it yourself, and you've got suitable grid capacity to do that. That's great. Yeah. Unfortunately, in terms of an equitable transition, not everybody is in that position. So I think it's great if you can do it.
Right. Has anybody else got any burning questions? I wanted to have just a few minutes to talk about other things, but if anybody has got any questions they want to ask, then do speak up now.
I was just thinking, the batteries, would you not think that if every house had a battery and then they could sort of equalize the supply, that would be, I mean, it's similar to your car battery ideas, really, isn't it? It's feeding in to your battery when it's cheap and then feeding out when it's not.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think batteries are part of the solution. Just whether they're going to be stationary home batteries or whether it's going to be this kind of mobile battery that you have in your car, what sort of social demographics will be able to benefit from those? Is it equally accessible by all, by the majority? Could we envisage maybe less well-off people being able to buy electricity from homes that have PV and homes that have excess in their batteries? And I can see a world where all of that happens. I can also see that being really complicated. So how might that happen and be quite simple, and where everybody understands the transactions that and commitments that they're making? So yeah, I think battery storage is key. We can install batteries at a domestic level in North Northamptonshire, but anything greater than domestic scale battery is a real challenge in the area, again, because of grid constraints. So we couldn't have Yeah, I think there would be challenges if large streets, for example, install batteries. I think that could cause grid challenges. But certainly, it's a good technology.
Thank you very much. And thank you. An incredibly interesting talk. I feel like there is an awful lot more to cover. And yeah,
That's a real
really
pleasure.
interesting what we're doing. And actually, as Emmy said, it is really heartening to know that these things are happening. That despite a lot of things going in the wrong direction, there are things happening to push things to push the world the other way in terms of cutting carbon emissions and addressing the challenges that we all know we face. So, as I said at the beginning of the meeting, we'll put out notes and put out recording of the meeting within the next few days. Tim, I'm going to talk about things that may be of less interest to you now, so you'll feel free to drop off and we won't be offended. But I've just got a few sort of events and questions and things like that to go through now.
Okay, I'll go on mute now, but I will drop off at 9 o'clock because I've got to make sure my kids are in bed properly. But no, thank you all very much.
All right. Thanks so much. Thank you very much indeed. That was really interesting. So in terms of what you might think of as parish notices, I've got a few things to talk. So got a few events coming up. Next Thursday is the film screening of 6 Inches of Soil about regenerative farming, which we're co-hosting at the Arc Cinema in Daventry. So please do get a ticket for that if you can. I haven't seen the film yet, but I'm told it is very good. The intention has always been to have the film showing, then have it followed by a Q&A panel with experts or people who know something around regenerative farming. One of the experts on the panel was going to be a representative of the film production team, but unfortunately she has pulled out, so that's left us a little short. We do still potentially have a couple of people on the panel, so I wanted to just take a straw poll, really. So our people here who have bought a ticket already or thinking about doing so, would you plan to stay for the Q&A? We have Duncan Farrington, who's quite a well-known local regenerative farmer who's going to be part of the panel. So I think he'll have plenty of interesting things to say, and a representative of Garden Organic, but the panel's going to be perhaps a little lighter than we had originally hoped. So I just wanted to get thoughts on that.
I've been to other films at the Umbrella, and I found Q&As as being good because otherwise you walk away and it's unlike a film like The Great Escape or something and say, oh, didn't he do well here?
Yeah.
These always come up with questions, these films, and it's good to talk them through and whether they relate to you and Rachel, the situation. So I would think a Q&A would be good. It could bring a lot of conversation.
Yeah, that is my thinking too, I have to say. But Alexina is worried about sort of getting people there and then not delivering what they're expecting.
I mean, it is on early, isn't it? So it's not like
the film starts at 5:30, so it is quite an early start. I think the film itself is probably about an hour
till
and a half.
11 and things.
No, not at all. No, absolutely. So we should be out of there well before bedtime. Okay. Does everyone else sort of agree with that, roughly speaking? Okay, all right, thank you. I shall move on then. So so events. I've put a couple of new events up on our What's On recently, which is a bit out of the ordinary for us, but these are art exhibitions which are related to environmental and climate topics. So it would be interesting to know if people want to see more of that sort of thing. Do have a look at the What's On listing to see about those. One of them is a local artist called Jack Watto, who, what's he called it? It's called Protesting with a Paintbrush or something, I think. And he's willing to talk to or host at the exhibition, which will be in Yardley Hastings, sort of youth groups and schools and things like that. So if anybody has got any contacts with those sorts of people, then can follow that up with me and I'll pass the details on. Corn is helping to organise a climate summit for town and parish councillors at Delapre Abbey on Wednesday, the 9th of October. So if anybody is or knows other people who are town or parish councillors or parish clerks, then please do encourage them to come along. It's a free session and lunch is provided. Yes, Emmy?
Yeah, so I'm coming along, and then another parish councillor well, I'm not a parish councillor, but in the subgroup,
Yeah.
asked to. He said that only one per count.
We said that because we've only got. The capacity of the hall is limited. We're sort of looking at maximum sort of 50, maybe 55 people. So we didn't want some parishes to sort of block book 6 people and then be turning loads of others away. But we are keeping a waiting list. At the moment, it's quite short. And I think we've had about 20, just under 30 people booked. So there is still space. So if you either drop me a note with the name of the extra person, and I'll pass it on to go on the list. But I'm sure they'll probably be able to get in. I don't think that'll be an issue unless we get a sudden flood of.
So should he just go through apply by the form, even though he'll be same floor parish council as well?
No, we're keeping a separate reserve list for people where we've already got somebody. So if you
he would automatically. So he applies, and then he'd automatically go on.
Okay,
that's great.
That'd be fine. Yeah. Who is it anyway?
John Thomason.
Oh, I thought perhaps it might be. Okay, interesting. Yeah. Okay, no, that's good.
Thanks, Jane.
Should be a really good day, I hope. The idea is we've got speakers on 3 topics, which is communication, food and biodiversity, and the plan is to give parish councils sort of positive actions that they can take away and projects that they can put into place rather than just preach at them about how bad the climate crisis is, because I don't think we need any more of that. Okay, so I think that's it in terms of events. Our next meeting is Thursday, the 17th of October. We'll be starting at 7:30. Because it's our AGM, so we'll try and crack on with the AGM, get that out of the way in the first 15 or 20 minutes, and then we have a guest speaker from More Trees Now, all the way from the Netherlands, our first international guest, very exciting, who will talk about the tree harvesting technique that they pioneered there and which Mick is working hard to introduce into Northamptonshire. And on that topic, I'll just speak a few words. If Mick wants to add anything to it, then please do. But Mick has set up a group called Northamptonshire Community Woodland Volunteers, which is really about getting people together to do the tree harvesting technique and to put those trees into planting schemes. I think we're looking for volunteers to help with that. So if anybody's interested in getting involved. Anything else that you'd like to add to that, Mick?
We've put in a bid, or the Netherlands are putting in a bid for us for £15,000 to try and oil the wheels to try and make this thing happen. So that's one thing I think we should be aware of. Yeah, definitely. So we have plenty of equipment and things like that to get the project going, to keep it going long term, which is the idea, I think, isn't it? So yeah, some projects this winter and subsequent winters. So very exciting. If people on Facebook, it's a Facebook group called Northamptonshire Community Woodland Volunteers, so do join up to that to find out more about what's happening. And then on a slightly different piece, last week, 4th of September? Probably, seems like longer ago than that. We sent out our monthly corn exchange email, so the email is really just a digest of these are the new articles that we've published on corn exchange within the last month. I hope that people read those, or at least read the parts of it that they think will be of interest to them. What we would like to ask as well is if you see something on there that you like, there is a button. I believe there are buttons to enable you to share articles through your social media channels. If you do those, I know not everybody does, but if you could even add a comment onto the articles to say, this is what I thought about it, or just I liked it, then that it all just helps to build up some dialogue and some traction. Thank you very much, Tim. Thank you. Hope to see you again sometime. Thank you. Help build up some traction around those articles, getting a slightly bigger audience. Anything you wanted to add to that, Harry?
No, I think we just need to get some conversations going. The idea of Corn Exchange is that it is a forum, not just a
two-way conversation.
Yes. Yeah. And thank you, Emmy. You've commented. It's really great, but it would be good to expand the commentaries beyond just the kinds of people that come to our meetings. Just and try to get other people engaged. Tell your friends.
Mm.
And I'm just wondering, Mick, can we stress the need for volunteers? At the moment, you're flying solo, and it does
Yes,
seem
I am.
Yeah.
a bit much to ask. So I think if anybody here is in need of a bit of fresh air, talk to Mick.
Yes. I mean, Harry and I are both very keen supporters, but owing to our other commitments with Corn, we're not able to sort of take on a great deal else in terms of doing the tree planting piece. So it would be nice
But
to get other
there's
people
also
involved.
admin, isn't there, Mick?
Yeah, there is, absolutely. It's
Yeah,
not all
yeah,
getting out
and
there with spades in the ground, is it?
chasing other opportunities and
Yeah.
connecting up. I think networking. There's quite a lot of that happening at the moment.
Yeah, and actually that's the other thing I guess that people can do that's helpful. Looking for places where there might be good opportunities to harvest saplings. So if anyone can think of any openings, then do shout up about those as well. Keep an eye out. I think that has covered everything that I wanted to mention. So thank you all very much for coming.
Can I just
Sorry, yes, please do. Yeah.
Say the umbrella fair is back on at the race course 21st, 22nd of this month, so that's a week and a half. They called it very late, only 3 weeks before the event's actually happening, and it's going to have 17 tents. One of them is an environmental tent, one's a rebel tent, so they talk about Just Stop Oil and Extinction Rebellion and so on. And they've got about 2 or 3 stages running from 12 o'clock on Saturday to 11 at night. Then on Sunday from 12 o'clock until I think about 6 o'clock. They've asked us if we wanted to put a display in the tent. I think someone's come back and said we're very busy, but I don't know whether we could just put up the backdrop that we had or something like that might sort of give us a little PR in the environmental tent. There is security overnight, I understand, so I would hope we can leave things up on. We put it up at Saturday morning and take it down Sunday. But just an idea, and tell others as well.
Yeah, it is difficult because it's quite a big time commitment, isn't it, for 2 days? And I appreciate what you're saying about just sort of putting up the backdrop. It's really difficult because the umbrella fair do an awful lot of good things. I would like to support them, but this is quite difficult.
If I can speak personally,
I
had a long-standing arrangement that starts on Friday and doesn't finish until Sunday night, and I've been the one who's been putting up our exhibition. And I just can't make the date, Mick. Even if we'd had a 6 months notice, it wouldn't have been practical. This is just one of those things that turns up. But I don't think it does highlight the fact that we don't have kind of stand-ins. We could do with maybe something we can bring at the AGM. But I think if there's anybody here who's interested in what Corn does, we do need to not look at succession planning, but people around. It's really quite difficult for someone like Jane, for example, with lots of domestic commitments as well as other interests to,
Yeah, it is something we need to work on. I mean, it is difficult for every organisation. Volunteers is always a problem. So I think, unfortunately, we probably won't be represented at the Umbrella Fair event, which is a real shame, I know.
Yeah, I'm not sure who's going to be in that tent at the moment. They are frantically phoning people, but as I say, if they'd given it 6 months ago, people might have at least.
You might have been able to organise something. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you for that. And thank you all for coming. I think that was a really interesting talk. I have to say, I wasn't entirely sure what to expect because, but yeah, so much stuff going on there. Really interesting.
A bit embarrassing, don't you think? That
a bit embarrassing that we've got how far behind we are in the West. Yes, 100%. Oh my God. Yeah, I know. And the thing is, It's like, as with everything, the best time to do something is 10 years ago. The second best time is now. This sort of stuff is what we need to be cracking on with now, isn't it? Yeah. But interesting.
Rupert will be agreeing with us.
Yes. Okay. Right, we're already 10 minutes over time, so yeah. So I will wrap up there. Thank you all very much indeed, and hope to see you all again soon. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.